thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dr. King, for that wonderful introduction. I know it's wonderful because I wrote it. And I would like to thank the deans for coming here, for inviting me, and for supporting this program. All right, so this is the Subversive Power Play, How to Laugh Your Way to Insight. It's what I told Dr. King I would present on. And we have a problem here. We have a world as presented to us, in which we have to participate if we are to survive. You're all here. We're all here at universities. We're all wearing clothing, right? This is one of my favorite things to point out to people is like we all decided to get up and get dressed this morning. You made a choice. You didn't choose violence. Thank you. So there are rules. Right? To get here, you follow the rules of the road. If you didn't follow the rules of the road, you're either dead or under arrest. And so the world has rules. Some of which are formalized, some of which are informal. A formalized rule, anything that has a law. Or, since we're in a university setting, anything with a policy. But there are also a whole bunch of informal rules. One of my favorite ones that I'm working with right now in this presentation, because there's a bunch of wonderful honors college students in here. I know Dr. King is Rebecca. But I have to remember that when we're in this situation, rules of formality suggest that I should call her Dr. King. Now, I don't know what she tells students to call her, but I do know that at my university, my first year, my first day, I walked in, I tell everybody I'm a grumpy old liberal arts professor in a dashing middle-aged man's body. And I just said, call me Dave. And the students said, yes, sir. Because they're good Southern students. They can't break those rules of formality. It's always, yes, sir. Yes, Dr. Feltmate. We will call you Dr. Feltmate. They can't get my name up. That's an informal rule. Nobody's going to kill them. Nobody's going to lock them up. There's no fine. They can't break it. Like, it made them physically uncomfortable. And I had to make a very quick decision. Do I keep poking this bear, or do I not? And so I poked the bear for a couple of years, realized it was a failure, and moved on. So now I'm Dr. Feltmate around campus. Now, these rules are humanly constructed. Today, I want you to think about rules that are humanly constructed that are stupid. Okay? What? I teach a course in social problems at AUM. And one of my favorite activities to do with students is to get them to look up stupid laws. All right? And it doesn't matter what state you look up, there are always stupid laws on the books. Okay? One of my favorites in Alabama is you're allowed to drive the wrong way down a one-way road as long as you put a lantern on the front of your vehicle. What? Right? But you're not allowed to open an umbrella in a public space for fear of spooking a horse. Okay? Now, at a certain point, these laws made sense. They made sense to the people who wrote them. They don't make sense to us today. They're still on the books, right? In part because it is easier to not bother to enforce a law than it is to go through the process of removing it. But our rules, what made sense to some people in some places becomes stupid to people in other places, or weird, or strange. And whenever you encounter these kinds of rules, it's an opportunity for you to ask, so why should I bother to follow this rule? What is the good that the rule is there to preserve? What is the outcome of the rule? I mean, humans are fallible. We put really bad rules into effect sometimes for our own convenience. I want you to think about your parents. Hopefully they love you. Now, I have to say this, right? Because I have had students who have really struggled with their parents. And so I am hopeful that they love you. if they ever imposed a bedtime on you that you hated, they probably told you it was for your own good. You need to go to bed at this time for your own good. I've done this with my children. The your own good is so that daddy doesn't get so tired he loses it tomorrow. Right? We created a rule for people. And because I was bigger and stronger and had social support, I was able to enforce it. So the rules are fallible. Not all rules at all times are good. This is one of the great, wonderful, exciting things that we learn in a place like an honors college. Okay, so this is an honors college presentation. You are honors students. One of the best things to ask is, like I said earlier, why do we have certain laws and why do we follow them? Because sometimes when we hit a crossroads where a law or a rule of some kind is creating undue harm or burden, or we think it is causing undue harm or burden on people, you should sit there and you should go, is this a rule that needs to be struck down? Just because it's a rule, should I continue to follow it or not? Sometimes you may come to the realization that you should follow the rule. And other times, you'll not only think the rule is stupid, you'll have a reason why it's stupid, and we should get rid of it. So, the world is less stable and predictable than people in power want us to think that it is. This is one of the standard problems of human life. And Peter Berger, in his book, The Sacred Canopy. Now, Dr. King, I'm sure, has a favorite book in the study of religion. If it's not The Sacred Canopy, I just need you to know she's wrong. Right? Also, Dr. King knows that whenever she invites me to give a presentation, I will spend half the presentation trashing her. It's just the way this works. Right? But all socially constructed worlds are inherently precarious. Supported by human activity, they're constantly threatened by the human facts of self-interest and stupidity. This plays through my head at least once a week, usually when I'm reading the news. Okay? If you get nothing else from this, it should be go read like the first 33 pages of The Sacred Canopy. Wonderful, there's a wonderful social theory in there that will really help you to explain why the world ends up the way it ends up. So, if the world is constantly at threat by human self-interest and stupidity, how can we use that? How can we use that to our advantage? So something about closing doors and open windows. Okay, people have built a world for you to exist within. None of us comes into the world and it's like, okay, congratulations, you are sitting here, you're crying, you're doing all kinds of things all over yourself that you will be embarrassed about in a couple of years. We need you to come up with a system of government. We need you to come up with a way for you to get fed. If you have a winter birthday and you come from the land of the Great White North, like Dr. King and I do, that baby has to find a way to get warm. Because humans are forgetful. I need you to remember, babies are really bad at warming themselves up, feeding themselves, doing all of this stuff. And in fact, we take forever to get around to being able to care for ourselves. I still think it is no minor miracle that humans survived the evolutionary process long enough for us to be standing in this room, in a building that other human hands constructed. I'm talking into this wonderful device that somehow works. I don't know how it works, but it works. Because if you've ever... Who in here besides me is a parent? Anybody else besides me? Yeah. Is a parent. You got a kid, okay?
I have a cat.
You got a cat? The cat's more likely to kill you than it is to need you to help survive. At least if it's like our inside cat. Our outside cat's wonderful. The inside cat, he gets up and down. Those crying fits that those babies had at 2 in the morning, right? As a parent, you wake up and you struggle between, I love you, I want to look after you, I want to help you, and I'm going to kill you, let me go back to sleep. Okay? But I realized when my children were very, very small, that when they were screaming and crying in the middle of the night and I was stumbling through the house hoping I didn't trip on a toy or a whatever or stub my toe, that a large predatory animal would have been hearing a call for lunch. Right? The fact that our ancestors didn't get eaten when the kids were doing that every night is a real testament to the social power of humans and our evolutionary ancestors. And the great thing about human beings is we create some of the most incredible tools in the world, and then we forget we ever made them up. I'm using one right now, and it's language. I don't know how English got put together, much like anybody that's tried to learn English as a second language. But there's nothing short of a minor miracle happening, which is that my head hole is moving and making sounds. Now, I could make all kinds of other fun sounds, right? I could go, right, which sends my dog wild, right? But this is just a long series of grunts, squeaks, breaths out, breaths in, that you take as conveying some sort of idea. And the minor miracle, or the major miracle, if you will, is the fact that because you are socialized in a world in which you understand English, or can learn English, I can reasonably expect the idea that is forming in my head and being transmitted with these sounds out of my head hole into your ears is being received with the same intention, like the same kinds of pictures are arising in your head. And I do this in total trust because I can't read your minds. Language is an incredible tool that we use to build the world. There are many others. And you can conveniently forget the rules of said social worlds, or you can intentionally play dumb. Changing around language is one of the comedian's great tools. The ability to take homonyms and play them off of each other. To change intended meanings. To take a phrase and subvert it. For example, depending on your position on what the military tells us about what they are doing in domestic or foreign wars, the phrase military intelligence either describes something or can be seen as a massive contradiction that is meant to mislead you. When the rules no longer exist as fact, they become tools to experiment. So, here's the thing. With social constructionism, I'm not suggesting to you that there are no facts of the world. Every time I hit this, it makes a sound. My hand starts to hurt. Well, sort of. We can talk about a law of gravity. We can use it to express a concept. But if I change the discursive framework for the law of gravity, that doesn't mean that what gravity describes is gone. I'm still held there. Hallelujah. But if you think about a lot of the things that matter to us, one of the deep questions that I think every student should be asking is, why are you pursuing the major you are pursuing? Why are you studying what you are studying? Especially when you come to one of what a lot of the faculty, I think, would consider a real tragedy. You are studying something you hate. You are majoring in something you hate, hoping to have a career doing something you think is awful. And that's when we should really ask, well, why are you doing this? And you should be honest. Somebody told me there was a lot of career opportunities in this area. Okay, maybe there are. But that doesn't mean you're going to last more than a year working it. Or that you're not going to spend all of the money on alcohol and painkillers trying to beat down the emotional pain that comes from going into work every day. Or parents have pressured you into doing something when your real skill set lies somewhere else, and you know it, and there are professors and faculty around that know it, but you're scared to make the jump. Now, the scared is not unreasonable, but the fact, the social fact of, like, these jobs are necessary and they're important and people should go into them, that doesn't mean that it's a fact that you should go into them. Other people presented it to you as fact, but they don't have to live your life. And they do want the best for you. Right? But this is a subversion of their expectations just by me saying to you, well, think about this. Why exactly did somebody lead you to it? Now, if all the doors seem to be closed, draw your own window and open it. When the world is closing in, the sort of legendary characters that we look to, moral exemplars, heroes, they decided to completely change the rules of the game for themselves. Were they drawing on other ideas? Yes. Here I think of, like, Martin Luther King drawing on Gandhi and going, you know what? Let's see what happens if we choose nonviolence in the face of violence. Let's rewrite the script. Huge risk. It paid off. He saw a window, drew it for other people, and then they opened it. And this is where humor as a subversive form of play comes in. What is humor? Okay, humor is often treated as a perception of incongruity that is resolved through laughter. Incongruity, in this sense, just means that things do not work along a logically accepted path. Okay, we'll get to this in a minute. Now, they can be considered stupid or just confusing. Ever hear a 3-year-old try to tell a joke? They try to tell knock-knock jokes. There's no rhyme, there's no rhythm, there's no reasoning to it. But they've learned the formula for knock-knock, who's there, they say something, they come up with a bad answer, and then they just laugh uproariously because they've learned the formula for it. Now, for those of you that aren't parents, when you become parents, or heaven forbid you have to look after nieces, nephews, cousins, brothers, sisters that are very small, just laugh with them. Okay, before you, like, crush all their hopes and dreams of being able to communicate. Now, Elliot Oren's engaging humor is the one that I always go with. Humor, he has argued, depends upon the perception of an appropriate incongruity. That is, the perception of an appropriate relationship between categories that would ordinarily be regarded as incongruous. To get a joke is to blur boundaries in new ways and give insights into the way the world is and could be. All right, so let's play. I want to know, I want some favorite dad jokes or 4-year-old jokes. Let me give you an example of a 4-year-old joke. Ready? Why do gorillas have wide nostrils? No? No? Nobody? No?
So they can breathe?
No, it's because they have thick fingers. What's brown and sticky?
Oh, no.
A stick.
Thank you. Come on. What is it?
What do you call somebody with no body and no nose?
What?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
No, don't fix it. Don't fix it. Shh, it was good the first time.
I was making sure. I forgot.
Okay. I went into the store the other day and somebody threw a jug of milk at my head. How dare he?
What animal does the best at college?
What one?
A koala.
How come?
They have all the qualifications.
More.
What's the downside to eating a clock?
What?
It's time consuming.
A horse walks into a bar. He says, ouch.
I know, that's like that. Oh, a priest, a minister, and a rabbit walk into a bar, and the rabbit says, "I'm just here because spell checker didn't work."
This is my dad's favorite. A dyslexic walks into a bra.
Yeah, what?
What do you call Batman when he falls down a flight of stairs?
What?
Bruised wing.
I know my dad, to get me to do the dishes, he'd be like, knock, knock, I'm hello there, and he's like, dishes, and it's dishes who? Dishes the police, go do the fucking dishes.
That's really good. That's, okay, so, these are dad jokes. You know how to do them. You know how to play with these rules of language. By the way, how do you know you're dealing with a dyslexic atheist? They insist there is no dog. This is, you know, some people will say that puns, these kinds of dad jokes, this is the lowest form of joke writing.
Yeah.
But what it actually does is it gets your mind working into how to play with sounds, how to flip these normal scripts for discussing and conveying information about the world, activates something else. You realize that you have resolved it cognitively by playing those two interpretations off against each other, and you realize that, like, how dare you? You're like, that could work in both ways. Oh, the rules don't have to apply. So let's think about this. Are these jokes good or bad? Are they good or are they bad?
They're so bad that they're good.
They're so bad that they're good. Okay, what does that mean?
They can be predictive, they can be kind of, I guess in a way we would be frustrated, we may not have caught what it was going to be told as the punchline, but once the punchline is told, it's worth a good laugh and it is a good time.
Okay. At what point? So, if it's good, it's a good time, you know it's coming. Why did we start with saying they're bad? What's bad about them?
I feel like everybody just knows them already, in a way. It's like kind of super predictive, not super creative.
A lot of life isn't super creative or pretty predictable. I mean, one of the things that we find a lot of enjoyment in is predictability. How many of you have a favorite song? Right? You ever have one of my tricks, by the way, for getting papers written or things written on time is I pick one song, put it on repeat, and play it to death while I'm writing so that it just becomes like white noise. and I don't have to think about anything else, so I pick a song I like and ruin it. But that is the joy in predictability. Now, I see the other three hands. I've got 1, 2, 3. So one of the questions here is, do we always have to be creative to play? Because sometimes playing within rules opens up opportunities for creativity that we didn't anticipate. Best example of this that I can think of, the best athletes in the world take the rules of their sport and push them to the absolute limits, but they play within the limits and do phenomenal athletic feats playing the games at their highest levels. They find opportunity within the rules. Here, and there, and then right there.
Sometimes I consider it bad because, like, when I first hear it, I'll get angry because it caught me off guard and it's different, and I'll just get irrationally angry over puns. I don't know why, and I'll laugh, and it's fine. Sometimes they just catch me off guard.
Okay. So the question for you, don't answer this because this is going out on tape, right? Everybody say hi to the NSA. Is why do you personally, and other people like you, and I put this in shutter quotes because, again, if we go back to the rules part of this presentation, rules are really important, or certain rules are really important for certain people. I know some people that get really angry at rules being broken. One time, I was teaching on this idea. I was teaching the ideas of a sociologist named Garfinkel. And Garfinkel would go into different situations and intentionally subvert the rules and see what people's reactions were. And he got beaten up quite a bit, right? But what I did was I was teaching this in class, and I decided to lie down in the middle of the classroom, like right there where that aisle is, and I stuck my foot up in the air and I pointed at the board where the material was. And I just kept talking like I'm talking now. And most of the students were like, oh, that's what he's doing. He's doing the thing. He's doing the thing from the textbook. And one student started saying, please stop. Please stop. You're laughing, but at the time it wasn't particularly funny for them. And I said, why do you need me to stop? Why is there urgency in your voice over this?
Secondhand embarrassment.
Maybe for you it would be secondhand embarrassment. They said teachers aren't supposed to act that way. All right? So, because I had subverted that rule, this person got, maybe not angry, but certainly anxious. And I have been thinking about that for a decade now. Is why was this person so heavily invested in the rules and the norms being consistent that in doing the thing from the textbook, they actually illustrated the point deeply. Right? That some people get really anxious and upset over this. So part of the reason I'm sharing that, you are not alone. That's wonderful. You're not special, Snowflake. No, it really is wonderful to know that if you have this thing that you might feel embarrassed about or worried about, like sharing that you get angry at puns in a presentation on humor where I just asked everybody to give out puns. Is it kind of brave, right? She's like, we just went through the thing that I hate. And knowing that, okay, and looking at yourself, you can actually understand other people. That's a start towards understanding why these rules matter so much to us. So you can give us some of that insight And maybe you have a particular diagnosis, I don't know. Right? 'Cause some people who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum really need orders, and I'm not saying any of this, right? But what I am saying is you might be in classes with people who are really great, but they do really need that sense of rule and structure for them to function at their best. And so the subversion of those rules, they're going to react in a way to try to put the rules back into place. Okay? Knowing where and when you react to put rules back into place is really important for them. Now, Nate?
Yeah. I'm thinking about why the jokes are considered good or bad. I think we're socially invested in thinking about dad jokes as bad, which is kind of an odd thing to do when you really think about it. Like, because we're looking for a very particular pattern. Like, usually it's wordplay of some kind, and we're categorizing that as a dad joke, but we're also invested in thinking about those jokes as bad jokes, regardless of whether or not they make us laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you know, therefore, like, you have the question of like, well, if it makes you laugh, isn't it a good joke? And the answer is more complicated because we're invested in saying that it's a bad joke.
Yeah. And let's tap on that joke, a phrase from Lewis Black. Let's tap at that joke for a minute. I'm going to tell you another dad joke. I am a dad. The law protects me as far as I understand it. Classic dad joke. Somebody looks at the dad, says, "Did you get a haircut?" He says, "No, I got them all cut." Think about what that joke does to language. It reveals this kind of smooth, leveling acceptance of social norms and rules. To say a haircut, you are automatically implying, yeah, we know you got all of your hair cut, you got it styled, you got it put a certain way, right? Dad is going, don't you think that the way that the language is going should say, didn't you get all your hair cut? Like, wouldn't that be the best descriptor of what is going on? One of my favorites that came out of teaching, I was teaching a social theory class a few years ago, and I asked my students this basic question. Somebody asks, "How are you doing?" What do you say? Good, how are you? I heard some fines.
Sometimes on the phone, someone will ask me how I'm doing, and then they won't even listen for a response. And they'll start talking.
Are they a someone? Or
They're
are they a something?
oh, there is someone. There is someone working, and they're very busy usually.
They're probably you know what, if they're getting paid by the phone call, my heart goes out to them because that's an awful job. How many of you have ever answered the question, "How are you doing?" And you said, "Good, how are you?" or "Fine," and it was an awful day, and you felt terrible? Great, wonderful. Dr. King, why did you invite me to talk to a room full of liars? When people ask me, "How are you doing?" I will give them a straight answer, much to my wife's embarrassment. Because if a stranger asks me, "How are you doing?" I'll say, "Today I'm feeling terrible. I feel really nauseous and sick right now." I'll answer them honestly. Some of you are laughing nervously. Because I'm breaking all kinds of social rules and norms and etiquette. And as the students pointed out to me very rightly, nobody actually wants to know how you feel. They just want you to say fine and move on. They don't want to hear about how you're doing. And so I asked him, so why did you ask how you were doing? Well, we were being polite. But you didn't want to know. You were being rude. You asked them to speak about how they're doing, and then deliberately closed off an opportunity for them to connect with you. All in the name of manners. These kinds of jokes are playing with those same kinds of rules. Last one.
I was gonna say, like, I think they think they're bad because they've been deemed as, like, corny and cheesy, because it does evoke, like, for some people, like, anger, because I feel like they're just expecting them, they already know the format, like we were talking about. They know the format, so they know they're gonna say, like, a question or start off, like, a story, and then end it with them picking on something that you say every day, or that you hear every day. Like, for example, how dairy. Like, we hear dairy, but, like, we are expecting to, like, almost feel personally attacked. You know? Like, we're expecting our language that we use to be twisted.
Right.
So they're, like, corny and cheesy, and we're just, like, preparing ourselves to be upset.
Or entertained.
Or entertained.
I find the jokes good because my little sister, she just turned 6, so the 5-year-old jokes are very interesting. And it's like, listening to her, I'm like, wow, these are really bad, but her laughter is contagious. So I'm like, you know, if you like it, I love it, you know, keep going.
I'm telling you, I use the what's brown and sticky, a stick joke, every chance I get. I love that joke. I adore that joke. Because it's actually quite clever, because nobody ever thinks to say a stick unless they've heard what's brown and sticky before. Right?
So it's not like funny, but I'm from Virginia, and we say howdy
Okay.
where I'm from, which is just how do you do,
Mhm.
but we say howdy, and
Yeah.
then the other person says howdy, the end of the story. Like, there's no expansion, it's become one word as a greeting with no original intention behind it.
Yeah.
And then I use the term, what can I do you for?
Mhm.
And around here, most people say, what can I do for you?
Mhm.
But there's a different meaning. And I was working one day and my boss said, like, Kia, what does that mean? Because I know it doesn't mean the same thing. And I was like, oh yeah, so it doesn't mean the same thing. What can I do you for means tell me what you need me to do and don't dilly-dally.
Okay.
We're not trying to go around it.
Yep.
Tell me exactly what you need.
Yes.
You need your opiates, let's get them filled. But it's very similar language, but they're different.
For the sake of the video recording, can you please tell us that you at least work in a
Yeah,
clinic
I
or
work in a
someplace where you're
pharmacy.
She works in a pharmacy.
We work together.
In the same pharmacy.
They work in the same pharmacy, right? Well, I mean, before you talk about just...
Well, I work outside the pharmacy, she works in the pharmacy.
Yeah, I'm just more concerned about you being put out on the internet as, I can get your opiates. Right? This poor man over here is about to bounce his face off at the desk laughing. These are things you've got to think about when you're up in front of a room. Yes?
I feel like we've missed an opportunity with how are you, because we're not asking even about a mood. That's a very deep question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an opportunity for a dad joke, maybe.
Or the insight that a kind of dad joke brings about. So one of my favorite responses to how are you, to subvert the expectations, is to ask, how am I what? What do you think the most immediate reaction for most people is? How am I doing? How am I doing what? I have a rule in my syllabi. It says, act 4, think 40. This behavior, anybody that's ever been around a 4-year-old is familiar with it. How are you doing? How am I doing what? You keep asking very straightforward why questions. Thinking like a 40-year-old, though, means that you take in all of the social understanding that you've accumulated in your lifetime and use that to anticipate why you would be asking that question. Right now, this entire lecture, guest lecture, is about using this sense of humor. Okay, so I understand some of the basic rules of English. I'm keeping it clean, right? Because, and I'm keeping it clean, non-political, non-religious, precisely because I'm not trying to start fights today. But I am using it pedagogically to teach you how to use this through examples. So you could have asked, how are you doing? How am I doing what? How are you teaching us to use this through the way that you are standing up on a stage, in front of a camera, in front of a group of strangers, using your knowledge to get across this point of what you want us to do. Right? By the way, I told you I'd do that. So what do we learn about ourselves and our reactions to these jokes? What are you learning about yourself? Remember, like I said earlier, you're not special snowflakes. That's a good thing. It is always a good thing to know that you are not alone in this world. There are other people like you. There are people that have your same strengths. There are people that have your same weaknesses, your same hopes, your same dreams. There is a community out there for you. You do not need to be alone. Okay. How can you use this kind of logic to play with the expectations of the world? I really love honors students. I do. I love them at my university. So far, I like all of you. Mind you, I don't have to grade you, so that's a plus in your favor. But one of the things that a lot of honor students carry as a burden, you are excellent students, and you know how to play the games of the university really well. Okay? You know how I know? You don't get to stand up here and give this lecture if you're not good at the rules. If you're not good at the game, they're probably not going to call you doctor. In that, you carry with yourself, or you place upon yourself, real burdens to make sure that the rules work. Because you have invested a lot in these rules. You have invested a lot in this system. And you are trusting that this system is going to pay off for you. And when I say pay off, it will pay off for you. But it might not pay off financially. The worst times in my life, the one thing that has never left me is critical thinking capacity that was given to me through the liberal arts at St. Thomas University, where I did my undergrad. It is the foundation for my ongoing survival in a world that sometimes is trying to work with me and sometimes is trying to kill me. Doesn't always pay the bills. But it lets me look at myself and say, why does the system not seem to be working for me? Why does the world seem to have it out for what I have to offer? And sometimes it's because other people are self-interested. Sometimes, I think, some of the people who have it out for me are stupid. Now, that's a very biased statement. Take that with a grain of salt. But That is a point that is worth considering, and that's floating through everything that you do here. It's floating through every campus in this country and on this continent. Is this question of asking, why does the world present itself the way it does? Why should you accept that? Okay. So how are you going to use this kind of logic to play with the expectations of the world? I can't answer this one for you. And I'm not going to ask you to answer it now. In part, again, this is going out on the internet, and you don't know who's going to consider your answers a problem. But this is worth thinking about. And it really starts from deeper questions. What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of communities do you want to be a part of? What can you do to make those communities successful? Oh, and by the way, because I'm talking to honor students, you can't do it all. Give it up. No, seriously, do your part well. But honor students across the United States are wonderful at grabbing the reins, holding tightly to the reins, and going as far as they can, and then burning themselves up. You are all smart, talented people. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten into this honors program. This is one of those look to your left, look to your right, see all the other smart, talented, wonderful people? Good. Rely on them. Use them. Be used by them. With consent. Knowingly. With consent. All right? Because this is the way that humans really come to shape their world. We do things together. We sit down intentionally and we look at each other and we say, you have a strength that I don't have. I value that strength. What can I do to help you make that strength go out into the world, because what you do is better than what I do? Okay? I am delighted to work with people that can work with small children. I love sort of anybody from about, I'd say 16 on up. I love teaching people from that age on up. Don't ask me to teach small children. I don't have the gift. I know I don't have the gift. I stay away from teaching small children because I would intellectually ruin them. Other people have a true talent for working with them. I don't tell those people what to do. I ask, what can I do to help you be better at what you do naturally? What can I do to support you? How do I get out of your way so that you can thrive? When you do that, part of what you do is you realize some of the limitations and barriers that are in the way. And when you realize those limitations and barriers, you start asking, who's invested in keeping the limitations and barriers up? How do we undermine it? All right. These, I think, are questions that you can provide answers to in the Q&A period. But I do think that this one is pertinent. Again, let's not put too much identifying information out on the internet. What are some things in our world that make you angry? Because you think the people doing them should know better, or worse, they know better and they do those things anyway. Okay? Like I said, don't put identifying information out on the internet. Same with you. Again, I mentioned the pedagogy earlier. Trying to support Dr. King. She's got you next class. The camera won't be on. these are the kinds of things that you can come in, you can think about, you can talk about in classrooms. Because once you know this, now you've got a moral foundation. You can start looking at your own moral foundation, you can look at other people's. And what do you really want to say to those people? Why do you want to say those things? And do you think that just saying something would change things? By the way, one of the powers of humor is, and it goes back to that question of what makes a joke good or bad. What makes a joke bad, in some cases, bad, is we take language seriously. We take, like right now, I'm purposefully using this cadence and tone in my voice to convey the sincerity and the seriousness of what I am trying to get across to you. You can almost tell from the rhythm when I switch into a joke for a transition or not. And dad jokes subvert this. They subvert the seriousness with which we would expect the world to operate. People with power, with whom we disagree and whom we think we can catch. If you think somebody is doing something because they should know better, and you actually think that they are a person that wants to do better, you hope that you can catch them and get them to reframe themselves morally towards the point, like that they can be convinced by an argument and a shifting of their perspective so that they see that in their actions they have not been conducting themselves the moral way that they want to. Power often comes with some kinds of social pretense. Says the guy standing in front of the room wearing a tweed suit and this very fine tie. I'm dressed like this in part because I'm taking on a particular kind of pretense, and I look damn good doing it. But this is one of the classic types of jokes. The emperor had to point out that the emperor has no clothes, is to say that the emperor, in getting everybody to buy in, we all know the fable of the emperor's new clothes? Okay, good. If you don't, go look it up. Please don't look up a video of it. That kind of thinking, the purpose of that, or one of the purposes of that fable, is to get us to realize that catching somebody in those kinds of moral conundrums where they say one thing but they're doing another, and pointing it out makes everybody go, you know what, the whole pretense is gone. We now realize what's really going on. Is incredibly empowering to people and disempowering to the people who are trying to force their definition of reality on others. So let's become satirist for a second. This is where I spend most of my head time. Yeah. I know, I got 5 minutes. You think I don't do this? Satire is using a comedic sensibility for purposes of attack. It's attacking another worldview. It intentionally points out the hypocrisy in other people's words and actions, and it juxtaposes those inconsistencies with the moral good of your worldview. I decided not to use bad language, right? Although I would always advise anybody to go watch George Carlin's 7 Words You Can't Use on Television and the different variations of that bit, in part because he is doing everything that I was talking about today. He's using language to subvert expectations and basically ask, why can you not say these 7 words? It undermines somebody else's power to define and shape the world. Okay. So how could you take that thing that you did not want to hear and turn it around on people? How could you show that their behavior and ideas are actually incongruous with the world the way it should be? This is a very risky proposition. If you are going to step out and say that the world should be different, you are exposing yourself to attack. You're exposing yourself to criticism. You may get killed in the most extreme senses. Okay? However, the world will not change towards the way you want it to change without you getting involved. Other people are actively trying to shape the world. In some cases, I don't know who you are, but somebody else may be trying to shape the world in a way where they want you dead. If that is the case, you probably don't have a choice but to step out and say, let's change the world. Here's the way it should be. And here's why you are stupid and dangerous in proposing the world the way you think it should be. All right. So it's a world of possibilities when you embrace the creativity of challenging the world as it's given to you and play with other ways of living. That's when we engage in subversive power. Use a sense of humor, bring the world the way you think it should be into being, and remember, other people are playing this game too. So it's okay to play with and or against them. All right. Now for something serious. Snoopy and Alice would like to say thanks for inviting our human, the doc, send back with cookies. Any questions, concerns, deep-seated anxieties? See? 4 o'clock.
I